So we've all been in this exact situation.
Oh, I'm sure we have.
Picture this. You're sitting at a dinner party, or maybe you're trapped in a boardroom meeting, or you're just staring at a talking head on a cable news panel.
Right?
And the person speaking is just stringing words together with this absolute terrifying confidence.
The polished tone, the eye contact.
Exactly. They have the posture, the authority, but somewhere in the very back of your brain, there's this primitive little alarm bell that starts ringing.
Yeah, that gut feeling.
You can't immediately articulate what the problem is, but you just know deep in your bones that they are speaking absolute nonsense.
It's a universally frustrating human experience. I mean, it's that jarring feeling of cognitive dissonance. You hear the melody of authority, the rhythm, the confidence, the volume, but the lyrics are just fundamentally broken.
Right.
And the frustration doesn't just come from the speaker. It actually comes from yourself.
Oh, for sure, because you feel helpless.
Exactly. You feel the argument is wrong, but you don't possess the immediate tools to dismantle it right there on the spot. So, you end up just nodding along or staying quiet.
There's a trick being played, but you can't find the trap door.
Yeah, you're looking around like, am I the crazy one here?
Well, today, for everyone listening, we are going to hand you the blueprint to that trap door. We are doing a deep dive into the fundamental rules of logic and the absolute laws of thought.
Foundational stuff.
Right. We are going to unpack how basic concepts connect to form the entire architecture of human reasoning. And our map for this journey is, it's actually this fascinating series of university-level lecture recordings where a professor systematically breaks down a 13th century logic text.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, sounds incredibly daunting.
Oh, totally.
I know the phrase 13th century logic text usually makes people just want to run for the hills.
Turn the volume all the way down.
Exactly. But the lecturer's core philosophy is actually what makes this source material so accessible. He makes this crucial point right at the beginning. We do not study logic to become professional academic logicians.
Right. And the analogy he used for that really, really crystallized it for me.
The music one.
Yeah, the music analogy. He compares studying logic to studying music. I mean, we don't put a 7-year-old child in piano lessons with the expectation that they're going to become a concert pianist playing Carnegie Hall.
No, a tiny fraction of people will ever do that.
Right. For the vast majority of us, we study music to develop an ear. We study it so that when someone sits down to play a piece, we can appreciate the symphony, we understand how the harmony works, and most importantly, when someone hits a blatantly sour note, our trained ear instantly recognizes it.
And that ear training is exactly what logic provides for the mind.
Yeah.
It allows you to instantly spot the sour notes of sophistry, of manipulative political speeches, of fallacious advertising in your everyday life.
But getting that ear training it's not easy.
No, it's not. To acquire that mental ear training, we have to start with a rather extreme exercise. If we are going to explore the mechanics of the mind today, the listener has to do something quite difficult.
Okay, lay it on us.
You have to temporarily suspend your reliance on the physical world.
The lecturer is so adamant about this. He insists that to truly understand the laws of thought, we have to abandon our senses.
Yes, completely.
We have to detach from external reality because logic, pure formal logic, does not teach us a single thing about the physical world. It's a system of pure relationships.
It's all about how concepts connect, not what the concepts are made of physically.
And he uses this stunning visual for this. He says studying logic is like being an astronaut who has just been launched into a zero-gravity space capsule.
I love that analogy. Think about what gravity actually does. It pulls everything down to the earth, right? It grounds things in the dirt, the heavy, the concrete.
That messy reality.
Right. In our everyday lives, our minds are subject to the gravity of the physical world. We navigate reality, relying entirely on what we can see, what we can touch, smell, and hear.
But in that zero-gravity capsule of logic...
You have to let go of the walls.
Yeah.
You have to float freely, just completely detached from the weight of physical objects so you can observe the pure, unadulterated movement of the mind itself.
But why is that detachment so absolutely necessary? Because as humans, we inherently crave the concrete.
Oh, we do.
We hate the abstract. It makes us uncomfortable.
It does, and the source material explains the danger of that craving. When people consume media, watching television, scrolling through a hypervisual news feed, reading a magazine, they are hopelessly trapped in the realm of images and senses.
They're not the pictures.
They demand physical examples. If you say the word pen, they want to see the physical plastic tube with ink inside it. But logic requires you to elevate your thinking from the concrete physical object to the abstract concept.
Yeah.
If you can't make that jump, you simply cannot think critically. You are doomed to only react emotionally.
And he proves this with a really elegant example using the Arabic letter elif, which, for those who don't know, is essentially just a straight vertical line.
Right.
He compares the concept of that line to a physical pen. So let's play this out for the listener. Imagine you are holding a pen right now.
Okay, I've got one in my head.
It could be a cheap plastic ballpoint, it could be a wooden pencil with bite marks on it, or maybe a heavy, expensive metal fountain pen.
Sure.
If you are stuck in the physical world, relying on your senses, all you can see are those differences. Wood, metal, plastic, blue ink, black ink.
But if you enter the zero-gravity capsule, what happens to that pen?
You strip all of that away.
Exactly. You strip away the wood, you strip away the metal, you strip away the ink. What are you actually left with?
You're just left with a geometric line.
You abstract the physical pen into a pure line. And what is the fundamental essence of a line?
It has two ends.
A line has two ends. And what are those ends? They are points.
Wow.
Suddenly, you have entirely stripped away the physical object you are holding, and you are analyzing the pure mathematical, logical reality that underpins the object.
You are completely free from the distractions of what the object is made of, or, how much it costs.
Yes. You found the basic logical rule governing the object.
That makes me think of architecture, actually.
Oh, how so?
Well, if you look at a skyscraper, your senses are overwhelmed by the glass, the steel, the reflection of the sun, all the people walking in and out. You're reacting to the sensory experience of the building.
Right, the aesthetics.
But an architect looks at the same building and sees the blueprint, the pure structural math that keeps it from collapsing. Logic is the blueprint.
That is a perfect parallel. Because demagogues, manipulators, marketers, they rely on sensory language and emotional imagery precisely because they want to keep you out of that zero-gravity capsule.
They want you staring at the shiny glass.
Exactly. Because if you float up into zero gravity and look at the blueprint of their argument, you will immediately see that the structural math is flawed and the building is going to collapse.
Okay, so we're floating. We've left the sensory world behind, but here we hit a massive speed bump in the source material, and it's honestly one of the most controversial choices the lecturer makes.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
He chose to teach this entire course using a 13th century logic text written in classical Arabic, rather than using a modern textbook written in his native modern Turkish.
And he anticipates the pushback for this decision immediately.
Well, let me be the one to offer that pushback, because honestly, reading that part of the transcript made me roll my eyes a bit at first.
It sounds incredibly pretentious, right?
Totally. We live in the 21st century. Cognitive science, linguistics, philosophy, they've advanced exponentially. Why on earth are we dusting off the vocabulary of a 13th century text? Shouldn't the rules of logic be taught in our everyday, accessible, modern language? I mean, language evolves. Why regress?
It is a completely fair skepticism.
Yeah.
But language is just a vehicle. It is the car that carries your thoughts from one place to another.
Okay.
And the lecturer's argument is that sometimes the modern vehicle you were driving has the wrong parts installed at the factory.
Interesting.
It's not about ideological zealotry or romanticizing some golden age of the past. It is entirely about conceptual precision. He argues that modern translations of classical logic texts are riddled with foundational structural errors that literally make it impossible to learn the actual rules of thought.
Okay, I need an example of that, because claiming modern language is broken for logic is a huge assertion to make.
Let's look at the specific glaring example he gives, which is the translation of the word definition. This perfectly illustrates the problem.
All right, lay it out.
In the original 13th century Arabic terminology used by classical logicians, there are two very distinct concepts used to identify a thing. The first is had, which translates literally to a limit or a boundary, think of the word for national borders.
Okay, had is a boundary.
And the second is tariff, which translates closer to a physical description or an enumeration of attributes.
So had is drawing a hard metaphysical boundary around the essence of a thing. It tells you what a thing fundamentally is.
Yes, exactly.
And taref is describing its external attributes, what it looks like, how much it weighs. Those are two very different cognitive tools for two different jobs.
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Now fast forward to modern Turkish translations of these logic texts. The modern translators took both had and tariff and translated them into a single, simplified modern word, tanım, which just means definition.
Oh, wow. So they took a surgical scalpel and a sledgehammer, threw them in a toolbox, and just labeled them both tools.
It gets worse than that. In classical logic, you have to categorize these concepts to build formulas. A had a boundary can be categorized as complete or deficient.
Right.
A paraphrase description can also be complete or deficient. But when the modern Turkish textbooks use the word tanim for everything, you end up with absolute absurdities on the page.
Like what?
Well, if a student tries to translate a deficient boundary, the modern book calls it a deficient complete definition.
A deficient complete definition. That literally makes no sense. It's an oxymoron.
It is a total contradiction in terms.
You are a student trying to learn the infallible, rigid rules of logical thought, and the textbook itself is feeding you a nonsense phrase that breaks the laws of logic.
The lecturer notes that Western philosophy actually solved this quite smoothly by relying on Latin roots. They use the word definition to represent the strict boundary, and description to represent the physical attributes.
So there's no confusion there.
Right. But because modern translators in his language tried to force complex classical mechanics into simplified, everyday modern vocabulary, they broke the machine.
This implies something terrifying about how we communicate today. If your language lacks the precise word for a logical relationship, your brain might actually struggle to see that relationship.
Yeah.
If you only have one word, you literally cannot perceive the difference between a strict essential boundary and a loose physical description. Language isn't just the paint we put on a thought. It's the scaffolding that allows the thought to be constructed in the first place.
And this explains why we so often feel we are talking past each other in modern debates. If our shared vocabulary has become muddy and generalized, our shared reasoning becomes muddy.
Wow.
The lecturer forces his students to use 13th century terminology, not to be pedantic, but to hand them a set of perfectly calibrated razor-sharp scalpels rather than the blunt butter knives of modern slang. He is trying to restore the scaffolding.
Okay, so if we have our scalpels, we need to learn how to operate. We need the secret code of how arguments are actually built. Moving from classical terminology into modern symbolic logic, the sources break down how categorical propositions are mapped out. And they do this without even using full words.
Yeah, because if we're going to study the pure form of thought, we need to strip away the messy, emotional content of language as much as possible. We need a code.
Right, back to the zero-gravity capsule.
Exactly. The foundational system of syllogisms sounds like a strange chant. Sep, sip, 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 sip.
Sap, sap, sap. It sounds like a jump rope rhyme, but it's apparently the DNA of human reasoning. So let's decode it. What do these letters actually represent?
It relies on 3 letters for any given proposition. The first letter is always S, which stands for the subject. This is the core topic you were talking about.
Okay, and the second consonant is P, which stands for the predicate. That is the thing you're saying about the subject.
Right. And nestled between the S and the P is a vowel. The vowels are A, E, I, and O. These vowels define the exact relationship between the subject and the predicate.
Where did those vowels come from?
The history here is beautiful because it comes straight from Latin. The first Latin word we use is affirmo, which means I affirm. You take the first vowel of affirmo, the A, and that gives you the universal affirmative.
So S-A-P, sap, that translates to all S is P, a universal affirmative. For example, all humans are mortal. Every single human, no exceptions. The subject humans is entirely enveloped by the predicate mortal.
Perfect. Now take the second vowel of affirmo, which is I. That gives you the particular affirmative.
S-I-P, sip, meaning some S is P, for example. Some humans are writers. Not all of them, but at least one. We are affirming something, but only about a particular subset.
Spot on. So A and I are for affirming. For denying, we use the Latin word nego, meaning I deny. The first vowel is E. This gives us the universal negative.
S-E-P, sep. No S is P, for example. No humans are immortal. A blanket, universal denial. The circle of humans and the circle of immortals never overlap.
Finally, the second vowel of nego is O, the particular negative.
S-O-P. Some S is not P. Some humans are not writers. A denial, but only for a particular group. So we have sap, sep, sip, sop, A-E-I-O.
And with just those 4 Lego blocks, you can map out virtually any logical proposition. But you know, the intro promised the listeners a blueprint to a trapdoor.
Or did promise that.
So we need to show how this code actually dismantles a bad argument in the real world.
Let's do it. Let's construct a flawed argument that you might actually hear from a politician or at that dinner party and run it through the code.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a local politician is defending their economic record. They stand at the podium and say, All successful cities have low taxes. My friends, we have low taxes. Therefore, we are a successful city.
A classic.
The crowd cheers. It sounds great. It has the melody of truth.
But our alarm bells are ringing. So let's float up into the zero-gravity capsule and translate that speech into our sap, sep, sip, sop code.
Let's break it down.
Premise 1. All successful cities have low taxes. That is an A proposition, a universal affirmative. All S is P.
Right.
Premise 2. We have low taxes. Another affirmative statement. And the conclusion, we are a successful city.
So when you lay it out structurally, you realize the politician has performed a sleight of hand.
Oh, a massive one.
The first premise said all successful cities have low taxes. It did not say all cities with low taxes are successful.
Exactly.
There could be 100 failing cities that also have low taxes.
Yeah.
Just because you share a predicate low taxes doesn't mean you belong to the subject successful cities.
And you've just identified what formal logic calls an affirming the consequent fallacy.
Yeah.
By translating the emotional political rhetoric into pure S and P variables, the trick is exposed. The structural math of the building is flawed.
It's so clear when you put it like that. But the sources point out another massive trap here, another translation flaw that derails our understanding of this very code, and it goes back to how we define the S, the subject.
This is a huge point. Modern textbooks translate subject, which in logic simply means the topic of the proposition, as the grammatical word uzna, which in Turkish implies the doer of an action.
And that is a fatal error for a student's comprehension.
Completely fatal.
The lecturer uses the example, the apple is sweet. Grammatically, if you treat apple as the active doer of an action, it makes no sense. The apple isn't doing anything. It's just sitting on the table. It is not actively performing the verb of sweeting.
Right. In logic, the apple is not an active agent. It is simply the topic. In Turkish, the correct word would be konu, or in classical Arabic, mevzu. It is the arena in which the thought is taking place.
Yeah, the topic of discussion.
If you teach students that the subject of a logical proposition is an active doer, you completely warp their understanding of the laws of thought. You are forcing an action-oriented grammatical rule onto a passive state of existence.
It's like trying to measure the temperature of a room using a tape measure. You're using a tool designed to measure distance to understand heat. If we mistake grammatical rules for logical laws, we end up hopelessly confused about how reality works.
And to truly grasp these rules of logic, we have to understand exactly where logic operates within reality. We have to map out existence itself.
Okay, this is where it gets really deep.
The sources introduce this stunning 2,400-year-old classification system handed down from Plato and Aristotle. It's called the 4 stages of existence.
Listeners, if you take nothing else away from this deep dive, this framework will permanently change how you view every conversation you ever have. The universe is split into 4 distinct stages of existence. Let's walk through them using the lecturer's vivid example of fire.
Let's do it. Stage 1 is the objective stage, or Aini in classical terminology. This is the physical fire itself out there in the real world, the campfire. It burns, it emits heat, it gives off light.
Crucially, this stage is entirely universal. A campfire burns exactly the same way in a forest in Canada as it does in a desert in Australia. It doesn't care about culture, language, or human opinion. It just exists.
Exactly. Then we move to stage 2, the mental stage, or Zini. This is the concept or the image of fire held inside your mind.
I want to pause here because the boundary between the mind and language is tricky. Is this mental stage also universal?
Yes. The pure concept is universal.
Yeah.
If you ask a Native American in the 17th century and a Chinese philosopher in the 10th century to imagine fire, they are both picturing the exact same fundamental concept.
Right.
They conceptualize heat, light, the color orange, the danger of being burned. The mental image is shared across humanity. But the mental image of fire won't burn your finger.
Now we cross a massive barrier into stage 3, the verbal stage, lafsi or lisani. This is the spoken word used to signify fire, and this is where universality completely shatters.
It shatters into thousands of pieces.
This stage changes from language to language. In English, we say fire. In Spanish, it's fuego. In Turkish, ateş. And again, the spoken acoustic sound fire cannot cook your food or burn down your house.
Finally, we reach stage 4, the written stage, hadi. This is the physical text on a page. And this fragments even further than speech because it changes based on the alphabet.
You can write the word for fire using the Latin alphabet, Arabic script, Cyrillic, or Chinese characters.
Right, so we have the physical fire, the mental thought of fire, the spoken acoustic sound fire, and the physical ink on the page spelling fire.
So if the universe is split into these 4 stages, where exactly does logic live? Does it govern all 4?
This is the crucial insight of the entire lecture. Logic does not live in the physical world. It cannot tell you how hot the campfire is. And it does not live in the written ink.
Okay, so where is it?
Logic operates exclusively in the middle 2 stages, the mental and the verbal. It is the connective tissue between the concept in your head and the words coming out of your mouth.
It is the bridge between inner thought and outer speech.
There is a beautiful linguistic detail in the source that highlights this connection perfectly. The ancient Greek word for this concept is logos, which is where we get the word logic. When logos was translated into classical Arabic, they used the word nut.
What makes nut such a special word in this context?
Nut simultaneously means inner speech, the silent act of reasoning or thinking within your own mind, and outer speech, the physical act of talking.
Wow.
It elegantly captures the reality that thinking is just talking to yourself, and talking is just thinking out loud. Logic is the discipline that ensures the bridge between your inner speech and your outer speech is structurally sound.
So if logic is the bridge, then a logical fallacy isn't just, a mistake on a test. It's a structural collapse of that bridge. It means what you are saying no longer connects to a coherent thought. You are making phonetic sounds, but you aren't actually saying anything real.
Exactly. And this maps perfectly onto the modern visualization of this ancient concept. The expert transitions from Plato's 4 stages to what is known in modern semantics as the Richards-Ogden triangle, or the semiotic triangle.
I remember this from linguistics.
It visually maps out exactly how concepts connect to words and objects.
Let's help the listener visualize this triangle. At the bottom right corner, you have the physical object out in the real world. Let's use a real physical apple.
Okay, physical apple, bottom right.
At the top point of the triangle, the peak, you have the thought or the concept of the apple inside your mind.
Right.
And at the bottom left corner, you have the symbol, the spoken or written word, apple.
Object, thought, symbol. What is fascinating here is not just the points of the triangle, but the specific lines connecting them.
Yeah, this part blew my mind.
If you look at the diagram in the textbooks, the line connecting the object, the real apple, to the thought, your mental image, is a solid, unbroken line. It is causal. The physical reality of the apple directly causes the mental concept to form in your brain through your optical nerve.
If I see a physical apple, my brain automatically generates the concept of an apple. It is a direct, unbroken chain of cause and effect. But the line connecting the symbol, the word apple, to the object, the physical apple, is dotted. It is not a solid line.
Why is it dotted? Because there is absolutely zero inherent causal connection between a round, red, sweet fruit and the phonetic sound, apple.
The physical fruit did not demand to be called that.
No, it's entirely arbitrary. It's a social contract. Thousands of years ago, a group of English speakers implicitly agreed when we make the phonetic sound apple, we're all going to agree it refers to this specific red fruit. In France, they made a different agreement and said palm.
The connection between the word and the object is a complete illusion. It only exists because we pass it up through the top of the triangle, through the thought. The word triggers the thought, and the thought references the object.
And if the line between our words and reality is just a dotted arbitrary line based on human agreement, that connection is incredibly fragile.
It is fragile, and that is exactly why we need logic. Logic is the rigorous system we use to ensure that our arbitrary symbols are accurately reflecting our causal thoughts.
Yes.
When demagogues manipulate a crowd, they are exploiting that dotted line. They are using symbols words in a way that severs the connection to the top of the triangle. They are throwing emotionally charged symbols around without any solid thoughts to anchor them to reality.
They're juggling dotted lines.
Exactly. So how do we catch them? How do we actually construct a valid argument or deconstruct a flawed one without getting lost in the rhetoric?
Well, the sources explain that an argument, specifically a syllogism, is built using 3 specific Lego blocks.
Lego blocks. I love this.
A standard logical deduction consists of 2 premises and a conclusion. To build those 3 sentences, you only need 3 concepts: the major term, the minor term, and the middle term.
The Lego blocks of the mind. Let's define these terms because logic can get bogged down in jargon very quickly.
Sure. Your conclusion is what you are ultimately trying to prove. The subject of your conclusion is your minor term.
Okay.
The predicate of your conclusion is your major term. But the absolute magic of human reasoning happens with the middle term. The middle term is the conceptual glue. It appears in both of your premises, but it vanishes in the conclusion.
It's the stepping stone.
Exactly. It's the stepping stone that allows your mind to walk from the major to the minor term.
I need to see this in action. Give me a classic example and let's identify the blocks.
All right, here's a classic. All mammals are warm-blooded. All dogs are mammals. Therefore, all dogs are warm-blooded.
Okay, let's unpack it. Your conclusion is all dogs are warm-blooded. Dogs is your minor term. Warm-blooded is your major term.
Right. And what was the glue? Mammals. It appeared in both premises to connect dogs to warm-bloodedness, but it didn't appear in the conclusion. That is your middle term.
So what happens when someone builds a bad argument? What does a broken Lego block look like? Earlier you mentioned jargon, like an undistributed middle. What does that actually mean in plain English?
Let's build a flawed syllogism to demonstrate an undistributed middle. Premise 1, all dogs are mammals, which is true.
True.
Premise 2, all cats are mammals, also true.
True.
Conclusion, therefore all dogs are cats.
Obviously false. Our brain instantly rejects the conclusion. But using the Lego blocks, we can explain why.
Exactly. Our middle term here is mammals. In logic, for the conceptual glue to work, the middle term must be distributed, meaning it must refer to all members of its class in at least one premise.
But in our premises, mammals isn't distributed.
No. Dogs are some mammals. Cats are mammals. Because the middle term never covers the entire category of mammals, it fails to connect dogs and cats.
Yeah.
The glue fails.
I want to bring up the grammar analogy from the source material here because this is where the utility of logic really clicked for me.
Yeah, it's a great comparison.
Imagine you are walking down the street and a man walks up to you, looks you dead in the eye, and says, "I drink bread and ate water."
As a native speaker, you instantly know he said something fundamentally wrong.
Instantly. You don't have to consult a dictionary. Your brain rejects it. You know you don't drink bread. But if a 5-year-old child asks you why the man is wrong, suddenly saying, "because it sounds weird," isn't a good enough answer.
Right, you need a rule.
To explain why, you have to understand the underlying rules of grammar. You have to be able to explain that bread is a solid object, and the verb to drink requires a liquid object. You have to understand subjects, transitive verbs, and objects.
And logic is exactly this, but for thinking. Everyone thinks, just like everyone speaks a language. But very few people can actually think about thinking.
When someone makes a bad argument like all dogs are cats, you feel that same instinctual rejection. Wait, that doesn't make sense. But without logic, you can't explain why. Logic allows you to dismantle a thought structure like a master mechanic taking apart a car engine.
Exactly.
You don't just point at the car and say, "it's making a funny noise." You open the hood and say, your middle term is undistributed. Your conceptual glue is missing. You identify exactly which gear is broken.
This highlights the profound difference between human habit and formal rules. The lecturer uses a great anecdote about pronunciation to illustrate this. He talks about debates governed by the Turkish Language Association regarding how words should be spoken by news anchors versus the general public.
Right, the habit of a native speaker saying meva instead of the formally correct mave for fruit, or pronouncing yarın tomorrow with a distinct regional drawl.
People pronounce words based on regional habit, comfort, and the people around them. Language is full of irregularities because it is organic. It grows out of human habit.
It's messy.
Very messy. But just as language has a hidden, rigid grammatical structure underneath all those messy habits, our thought processes have an underlying structure. People often think based on messy emotional habits. Logic is the tool that maps out the formal, unbending rules beneath the habit. It tells you when your mental pronunciation is fundamentally incorrect.
So if logic is this essential hidden software running the human mind, did we always have it? Were humans walking around the savannah 10,000 years ago spotting undistributed middle terms?
That is a fundamental question of philosophy. The lecturer actually traces the historical evolution of human logic. He outlines 5 distinct stages in the history of human consciousness, showing how the human mind desperately searched for order for cosmos and logos in the chaos of reality.
Let's walk through this journey, because it's basically the history of the human brain waking up. Stage 1, poetics.
This is the era of the early theologians, the prophets, and the poets. Think of Homer and Hesiod. In this early stage of consciousness, humans did not have abstract analytical tools. Early logic was literally rhythm and melody.
That is wild to think about. Truth was not found in a spreadsheet or a syllogism. Truth was found in the cadence of a song. If the rhyme was perfect, if the meter of the poem was flawless, it felt inherently true to the listener.
It was aesthetic truth.
Right. The order of the universe was understood through the order of music.
But as society became more complex, music wasn't enough to settle disputes about land or trade. So we moved to stage two, physics and math.
Okay.
This is the era of the early physiologists and philosophers like Pythagoras. The mind demanded something more rigorous than a poem. Truth became numbers. It became an obsession with observable cause and effect in nature.
But numbers can't solve human arguments about morality or politics, which leads us to stage three, rhetoric and sophistry, the era of Protagoras and the sophists in ancient Greece.
This is a cynical but crucial stage in human development. The sophists realized that in an early democracy, truth was highly subjective. Truth became whatever you could convince a crowd to believe.
Ah, the original spin doctors.
Exactly. It was the art of persuasion, completely divorced from the underlying facts. It was all about emotional manipulation and linguistic trickery.
They were the masters of playing the sour notes we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
They were the people at the dinner party sounding incredibly confident while speaking nonsense. In modern terms, the sophists are the political consultants, the social media influencers who know exactly how to manipulate the algorithm of human emotion.
Yes, and society realized this was incredibly dangerous. So we evolved to stage four, dialectics. This is the era of Socrates and Plato.
Dialectics was the necessary antidote to sophistry. Socrates believed that truth could be found not by making grand emotional speeches, but through rigorous, combative questioning.
The Socratic method.
Right. You propose an idea, I tear it down, we find the contradictions, and through that friction, we inch closer to the truth.
Socratic friction is great, but it's exhausting. You can't spend 3 hours debating the nature of reality every time you want to pass a law or build a bridge.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the ultimate software update, stage 5, analytica or formal logic. And this is entirely the domain of Aristotle.
Aristotle looked at Socrates and Plato and said, questioning is great, but we need a permanent universal rule book.
Yes. He mapped out the A-E-I-O propositions. He defined the major, minor, and middle terms. He created the ultimate formalization of the laws of thought. He built the zero-gravity capsule.
And here is the most staggering, surprising conclusion from the source text. The expert shares two striking quotes about Aristotle's achievement that are almost hard to believe.
It really put it in perspective.
The first is from the philosopher Immanuel Kant, writing in the 18th century. Kant claimed that after Aristotle, the science of logic was completely closed and finished. For over 2,000 years, it hadn't taken a single step forward.
Think about the magnitude of that statement. Physics, biology, chemistry, astronomy, they have all been rewritten 100 times over.
Completely upended.
But the fundamental laws of how human beings structure a valid thought were perfected 2 millennia ago.
The second quote is from a young Ludwig Wittgenstein in the 20th century. He joked that if Aristotle could see how little modern logicians had actually advanced the field since his death, he would turn in his grave.
It is a testament to the fact that while our technology changes exponentially and our languages evolve and fracture, the underlying architecture of the human mind is a constant.
It's fixed.
The foundational software of human reasoning was essentially finished in ancient Greece. The ultimate battle in philosophy, even today, is still largely just math versus logic, Plato versus Aristotle.
We are running the exact same cognitive operating system as the ancients. So let's take a breath and look at the journey we've been on today.
It's been quite a ride.
We started by floating up into the zero-gravity space capsule of the mind, leaving the emotional, sensory weight of the physical world behind.
Escaping gravity.
We navigated the treacherous traps of modern translation, realizing that if we lose the precision of our vocabulary, we lose the precision of our thought.
We mapped out the 4 stages of existence, from the objective campfire to the written ink, and discovered that logic is the vital bridge between our inner thought and our outer speech.
We learned to dismantle bad arguments by examining the Lego blocks of our terms and premises, looking for the missing glue of the middle term.
And we traced the evolution of human thought, from the rhythm of ancient poetry to the mathematical precision of Aristotelian syllogisms. We've learned that logic isn't a science of the physical world. It is the fundamental grammar of the mind.
Which leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative thought to consider. We established that the entire foundation of logic, the essence of Nook or Lodo, relies on a healthy causal relationship between our inner speech, our thoughts, and our outer speech, our words.
Right, that bridge.
But look at the era we live in right now.
The era of algorithms, predictive text, and artificial intelligence.
Exactly. We are increasingly outsourcing our outer speech to machines. We use AI to write our emails, to draft our essays, to summarize our articles, to generate our text messages.
It's everywhere.
If the machine is doing the heavy lifting of organizing the symbols, of writing the outer speech, what happens to our inner speech?
That is the danger. If we stop doing the heavy lifting of connecting our own concepts, if we stop manually building the bridge between the thought and the symbol, does that mental muscle atrophy?
Do we risk losing the very laws of thought that make us rational human beings?
It is a profound risk.
Right.
I mean, if you never have to dismantle an engine, you eventually forget how the gears work together. If we let algorithms do our logic for us, we might just lose the ability to spot the nonsense at the dinner party.
And we'll just be nodding along to the sour notes. To everyone listening, keep asking the difficult questions. Force yourself to build your own syllogisms. Don't let an algorithm do your thinking for you. The next time you hear someone speaking with absolute confidence, look past the melody, float up into the abstract, and check their structural math. Catch you on the next deep dive.